Hello everybody, this is the Astral Tourists. It is Tuesday, September 28th. Hopefully you're having a wonderful week so far. This is going to be Shapeshifting and Size Changes in the Astral. Also, I want to cover reality checks once more because I had a really funny one last night. So I will begin with reality checks. And if you just don't want to hear about reality checks again, you can skip ahead. So the main reason that they are so very important is that they train your mind to be more aware just on a basic level. I can't tell you how many times I've been happy I did some reality checks recently, because once you get into the habit, your mind will stay in that habit. Your subconscious will keep doing them when you're asleep. And that gets you aware, and you can astral project or find out that you're astral projecting, or find out if you're lucid dreaming and then astral project from that. So the not so interesting one that I've already done this morning is I was on my stairs and I just stopped. I do random ones, not just pre-planned ones. So I just stopped in the middle of the stairs and I started looking at the wall like, is the paint really that color? They should be like a real reality check, like really be looking around and scrutinizing a little bit, you know. And I saw a spider web that I haven't seen there before, so that was kind of fun. And I'm thinking, has that spider web always been there? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean I'm dreaming, right? So, but you know, everything else about the wall was just fine. I was not dreaming or astral projecting. I was just in the middle of my stairs this morning. So that's an easy one to do, and you can do that with anything. Some other popular ones are to try and press your thumb into your palm, and in the astral or a dream, it'll sail on through most of the time. Other people look at their hands and see if they have a wispy quality or maybe a couple extra fingers. That's worked for me a lot, but if my hands look normal, which they sometimes do in the astral, then I follow it up with a whole different reality check just to make sure. One of my favorites I've talked about before is the command float. If I'm dreaming or in the astral, I pop up. And I'll think I'm totally just having a normal day or something, you know, and I say float and up I go, and I'm like, oh, you know, tingles all over and everything, like, wow, I'm really in a dream and it feels this real. Or an astral projection, whatever it is. And I've covered before, how do you tell, is it a lucid dream or an astral projection? And my favorite way is to like do a whole reality change. Like if I'm outside and there are houses, I try and tell them to become castles. And if they do, you know, that's a lucid dream. Or if I want everybody to disappear and they do, that's a lucid dream. And if you're in the astral, some people might be like, why do you want me gone? You know, they'll talk back to you. Anyway, back on to reality checks. If you're new, I would say do them more than 4 times a day. Because even with lots of experience, I do like 3 and 4 a day. Consistently still, and that's because they work and they get me lucid on the other side there. So but if you're new, do them more often, maybe like every 2 hours. And I would say to mix them up too, like I do some regular ones, especially if you're not used to doing reality checks. You know, do the basic ones like looking at your hands or a command like float. And then do some random ones too. I can't tell you how many times like random stuff that I've done as regular reality checks during the day has got me lucid. I think I've talked about it before, but I have this vacuum, this red dirt devil vacuum. It's always in the same place. I leave it in the same place in the waking world here, but it could be anywhere else, and it'll get me lucid if I'm asleep. So that's a really fun one for me. And the really fun one last night was my printer. Oh my gosh. I was walking by my printer and I noticed there was not any paper in it. No paper. And that's just a wild thing because the printer always has paper. My significant other that I live with prints a lot, and it's really important that the paper is always there. And I'm the one that keeps the paper filled, so it's way more likely that it would be out of ink than paper. I mean, it's going to run out of ink first before I let the paper run out. So I'm walking by it and there's no paper, and I looked to see if it's on. And it was on, and everything else about it looked just the same and normal. But my mind knew, it grabbed onto that. Just that. So I began looking in the drawers to refill the paper. And what I found in there was so funny. Oh my gosh. The stacks of papers in the drawers where I keep the paper were all wrinkly, kind of like they'd had water all over them. And when I picked them up to pull them out and see if I could straighten them out or salvage them in some way, they all had big holes in the middle of the stacks of paper, like they had been cut out with the scissors. And that was just so hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, I'm astral projecting. It wasn't even a dream by then, and I could tell because of how it feels to me. But if you're not sure, you can always do one of those checks, And I was getting more and more aware, and I was observing the room, and, not everything was in it that should be normally. Like my computer stuff was gone, and the walls were actually not quite as scratched up. I've got a few scratches and things to paint over in here, and they weren't there in the astral. So I woke up before I could do much more with that astral projection. But I thought it was a really funny one, and it's a great example about how random reality checks, that you wouldn't normally think of doing can help you. I mean, there have been times in the past where I've stared at that printer and thought, okay, this is my reality check. Does the printer look normal? And that's the first time I think it ever didn't. It's the only time it ever helped me get lucid. But there have been so many other things that I've reality checked, like the paint on the walls or the carpet, the color of the curtains, anything like that. Like even if you're just doing dishes and you stare at that dish and analyze it, like, is this really what my dish looks like? Your brain will just overall make it a habit, and it'll be doing it in the astral and in your dreams, and it'll get you lucid. And it's just wild how these tiny little details will, something's going to work eventually. Something will trigger it, and your brain will be like, really look at that, and get more aware. And it works. So, okay, moving on. I know some people have been looking forward to the shapeshifting and size changes. So basically for shapeshifting, once you're in the astral, or even in a dream, you can practice, or even in meditation. Like if you haven't got that far yet and you just want to practice in your mind in a meditation, you can do that too. It's all about the intention and practice. I know it's not a big, huge shortcut, is it? I'm talking about practice, and maybe lots of practice, but it's very doable. And once you get used to it and how it feels to do it, it becomes very natural. So the good news is after you get over the initial hurdle of thinking about yourself in this whole different way, it becomes way more natural. So don't be thwarted by all the practice. I think one of the things that got me thinking that this would be a fun class to do is because once when I was in the Astral, not even once, there have been other times, but in this once in particular, I was in this meadow, this green meadow, and there were all kinds of people just practicing making different kinds of wings, like butterfly wings, bird wings, angel wings. Some lady was doing bat wings, I think, for Halloween. And they were having varying degrees of success. And I thought, that's a class I could do. So here I am doing it. So for wings in particular, and this can apply to other things later, but we'll just start with the wings. You need to be very specific with your intention. Think about the color, the overall shape, the kind of wings, like are they butterfly wings, angel wings? Start with a basic color, maybe, and then work your way up by adding spots or different colors later. Do they have a smell? Do they have a sound? How do they sound? How soft are they? Or do you want like hard Superman mega wings? So just become very specific with what you want. And then begin with the basics, the basic shape and outline. And make your intention for that to manifest. After you got the basic part of it down, then you can be filling in the colors and the other details. You might get lucky with an instant manifestation, especially if you're a very focused person initially. So don't rule that out, but just start simple. You can make the effort to try and have them appear fully detailed. It might work. If that's not working, begin with the basics. Just get the outline down and then fill it in with colors and sounds and whatever else you want to do. It might take a lot of just making little small changes to finally get the manifestation of the wings that you want, or whatever object it is that you're trying to manifest. Let's see. Something else I found about wings on the astral plane, like making a pair of your own, is I think it takes way more focus to actually try to use them to fly. So that's something to keep in mind, because you have to actually, to get them to work for flight, you have to actually be focused and intending the motion of them, the movement of them. And I think it's just easier to have them be decorative and move around in your usual way for flight by intention. So just one more thing to keep in mind. Moving on to size changes in the astral. Again, this is done mostly by intention and practice. For me, I'm going to cover point of light, because I used to have a lot of trouble with becoming smaller. So for me, that was a big lesson in the past, and it took a lot of effort. And I have found some little tips and tricks I hope will help you. The thing I found that did not help me initially was thinking about actually shrinking. Because to change size like that, you have to actually be thinking about shrinking yourself. And I had a lot of difficulty with that, and you can do it that way. Maybe you won't have that problem. So just be focused and intending to shrink and what that feels like, and becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. I can do it now to some degree, but it's not my favorite, but try it out. Maybe it'll work better for you. And here's the one that I found worked really, really well for me. I thought of something that I really loved, and I paired it up with a feeling. And so this one's going to be called Point of Light. And then you can change that into different lights. You can become more than one thing. So, but we'll start with one point of light. Okay. So here we go. I think about how super bright sunlight dances on my eyelids when my eyes are closed, and just how good that feels. And then I begin thinking, how good must it feel for that light to do whatever it wants like that? Right? And that's a fun thought. So now I've paired that up with the happy feeling, and the light is also feeling that happiness and that joy. And it can go anywhere and bounce around and float around. And I just make the intention to be that light. And that will work for me a lot of times. Just as a little add-on here, if you want to become invisible, that's a very easy way to do it. Become that small, that tiny one point of light, and then just think about blending into things instead of being so bright. Instead of sunlight, you're suddenly just, incognito light, right? And then you're invisible, and that's a great way to just get around all kinds of problems. If nobody can find you, they can't cause you any trouble, right? So, I've also covered invisibility now. That's one way. Another way to do invisibility is to think about that shift and just blending into the environment. It's not about actually not being there. You're there. But you have to keep your mind very quiet, and point of light is probably an easier way to go about it if you get the hang of the size change. Then you're just this little dot of light, and then you're just this little dot of incognito light. You can practice dimming yourself and changing colors. Again, more on the practice. I covered shrinking already. Dancing point of light is really a good one for me. And you can be different shapes too. You can try being a little square or a prism. You can turn yourself into various objects, all with this intention and practice. But pair it up with something that makes you feel really good, something you would love to be, and then you can work with it from there. So if it's not a dancing dot of sunlight, it can be something else. Think about things you enjoy. Other times I think about transforming into a luminescent bubble, or then I'll grow it into an orb and then separate and become 2 and 3 orbs. So that's another thing. It's becoming multiple objects. I just think about separating and splitting, and that works for me. And I operate kind of as a group that way if I've got that going on. I'm not very good at sending one off to do one thing and one off to do another. But it's stuff to practice with, think about. For growing larger, I think about something that's already large. Kind of like for getting smaller, I thought about something that was already small, like that tiny bit of sunlight. So for something large, I'll think about something that already is, like a tree, how good it might feel to be that tree, how the leaves smell, how the bark smells, how I smell as a tree, because then my smell is in there too. And I make the intention to be that tree. Something that might be a little easier for you to practice with is just overall substance. I know you've probably heard about me talk how I'm often in a misty kind of form in the astral. And I like that because it conserves energy, because I'm not doing a full manifestation of the energy body. And it's just so easy to move around as mist. But to practice getting larger as mist, I just think about spreading out. And then I'm like covering the whole room. And then, more spreading out in the sky. And you can practice getting smaller with mist too. You can make yourself a more dense, like, ball of mist. Another way to grow larger would be to actually think about the growth cycle and becoming a giant. And again, that's not going to be my favorite way, but it might work for some people. Like, especially if you're really interested in, like, I don't know, Jack and the Beanstalk. You could think about yourself growing like a beanstalk. I could see how that could work for some people. So be creative. Make the intention and practice, practice, practice. I would love to hear people's thoughts about this and any results you have trying these out, okay? So have a fabulous rest of the week, and I will chat with you again soon.